Jenna Hirshfeld joins us here, our latest edition of IQP Reflections. Jenna, of course, of the women's soccer team. And Jenna, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. I'm excited to talk about my IQP a little bit.
Well, let's hear about your D-term IQP from 2020.
Okay, so in D-term, I was scheduled to travel to Namibia, Windhoek, Namibia. And then obviously we had the COVID-19 pandemic. So we ended up kind of changing plans a little bit and completing a remote project. But our project still ended up being like a really great experience. It was on robotics education for underprivileged youth in Namibia. So originally we had intended on going to Namibia, traveling there, and then developing lesson plans and like implementing those lesson plans every day to an after school program in Namibia for like underprivileged youth. And then obviously we weren't able to be there to implement the lessons. So instead we created an online website, wpiroboticsed.wixsite.com. And we were able to put all of our lesson plans onto that website and really just be able to like reach a broader audience. So it was still intended for the learners at the after school program, but we also were able to create a ton of different lesson plans that are really available to anyone.
So first, wonderful job with that plug. You're going to give it at the end as people are logging off so they can go and check out your website. You look like a pro. Fantastic. I've done quite a few of these in the last few days, and you seem to be the first one that I've talked to that's been able to keep the general concept of what they were going to do if they went away. So the concept stayed the same, just obviously getting to travel and doing it in that area obviously is a huge loss. But talk about the planning process, and you obviously just don't plan to go away for IQP there and just get on the plane. Just take us through the process that got you ready to dive right in.
Sure. So we'll obviously having to adjusted like kind of change our planning process a little bit. So it was a little bit last minute. But we were like one of the lucky groups that were able to keep our main concept. So that was super helpful. But basically throughout ID 2050, my group kind of prepared learning about different like teaching pedagogy because like none of us had experience in education. So we kind of had to get that background as well as robotics background because only two out of four of us had experience with robotics.
And you were not one of those, correct?
No, I was not, including myself. So I'm a chemical engineering major and I know nothing about robotics. So I kind of had to like teach myself that.
So if I may ask, did you do that as a challenge to yourself, or was there a little bit of an itch there to kind of see what the robotics world was like? How did you end up?
So I just thought that the project was really interesting, like based on the concept. So like with being able to teach these like young students and like kind of bring STEM to an area where they aren't really exposed to a lot of STEM or a lot of project-based learning. So I kind of thought that that was like just like a really interesting concept in itself. And then like I didn't know much about robotics, but I was like willing to learn. So the project ended up working out really well. But yeah, it definitely took some time like with my partners who did have experience helping out the two that didn't have experience. And then just some like experimentation on our own. We ended up raising money to buy these robotics kits. They're like Vex IQ robotics kits that we are actually sending to Namibia for the kids to do the lessons that we created. So we kind of played around with those kits beforehand to learn how they work and everything.
Great. Tell me what a typical day was like doing your IQP.
Yeah, so I mean, the typical day was really interesting because it was all over Zoom. But typically my team would meet like for a couple hours in the morning and we would kind of go over everything that we needed to do for the day, see like kind of where we were progress wise. And then we kind of split off on our own the rest of the day and worked on developing the curriculum or like anything else we had to do that day.
Perfect. This sounds like a very successful IQP. We'll get to that in a second, but what did you learn from it?
I mean, I learned so much, like in part just from the project itself on the robotics and then also on like educational experience and like how to create lesson plans and the pedagogy behind all of that. So those were like really new experiences for me. I also like learned how to work in a group of 4 people where we all have different majors and different backgrounds. And like, I thought that it was going to be tough because, you know, half of us had experience in the subject and half of us didn't. So I was like, oh, it's just kind of like an imbalance here. It might be kind of hard to figure out how to go about this, but ended up working out really well. My group worked together like really, really well. So
Let's
just
shout
kind
out
of
your
like,
group. Let's shout out your group, please.
yeah, so Annie Hughes, who's also a member of athletics on the swim team, and then Mylan Charter and Chloe Melville. And all four of us did a great job.
I'm going to throw you off. I know we talked a little bit about the questions, but you talked about the teamwork that goes involved and bringing people in from different backgrounds. Did you use your athletic background to help with that? Because you meet in August, you know, you have some returners, you have some people you played with, but then, you know, the coach brings in new players, new talent, people improve. Is that a similar type of situation in trying to get everybody on the same page?
Yeah, I think there are definitely similarities. I mean, it's like every season, like you said, there are a different like variety of people you know, people you don't know, people with different experience levels, just as far as like how athletics works as at WPI, and kind of like familiarity with the team. So I think there's definitely similarities in like bringing together that team as well as working with an IQP group.
Last question to put you on the spot. Is that experience going to make you a better working outside your field and working with others? That going to make you a better chemical engineer?
Absolutely. I mean, just like learning how to learn a new subject in like a hands-on environment, where there's not really like a lot of guidance, I guess. So it's kind of like it was on our group to figure out what we wanted to do and how we want to do it, and then also kind of like get all that background information really quickly. So I think just that experience in itself, even if you take out like the technical skills that I learned for robotics, just that experience of actually like diving into something that I'd never done before. I think that's going to help me a lot in the future, whether it's chemical engineering or anything else that I'm doing.
What was the best, what's the best memory you're going to take away from your IQP?
Um, Honestly, I would say ID 2050, like being with everyone. I mean, obviously it was kind of disappointing when we didn't actually get to go to Namibia or like see each other in D term, but having that time in C term during ID 2050 where we were together and like planning and figuring out everything. And it can be like kind of a stressful time, but just like getting through it.
I've
together.
heard of that. I think some people are going to hear this and think that's the craziest answer they've ever heard. And I've heard from others
It probably will.
that they enjoy the process. Like
Yeah.
When they get to the end, they realize how important that was.
Right.
And any example of anything during your IQB other than obviously not going and having to do it remotely, but anything really in the trenches there that you weren't expecting that you had to adjust to?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, there were a couple of different things. I would say like part of our process was getting feedback from different teachers and students, kind of like in our local environment, to get feedback on our lessons and be able to tweak them a little bit and then send them. And I think like just kind of learning that not the entire world doesn't move at a WPI pace. So like when we have 7 weeks
Not
to do this
everybody's
project,
not everybody's on.
not everyone's on a
terms.
time crunch. Yeah, so like we're trying to move really quick, but we're like waiting a little bit on some other people for feedback. So I mean, we appreciated all that feedback. We got a lot of really helpful stuff, but it was definitely like, okay, we have to make this available for people kind of outside of our community too.
And you had mentioned the people that you did the project with. Can you tell me who your advisors were?
Yeah, our advisors were Joe Doran and Ken Stafford, and they were super helpful, and really like they're the reason that this project was so successful.
And then I'm going to guess there's a big smile when you saw your grades.
Yeah, it worked out well in the end.
And you've had a lot of smiles. You've done very well here, obviously, academically and academic all district selection, I believe, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, you've had, and that continued through this IQP. Congratulations. And way to make the best of it. I am happy to hear that you were able to still experience what you had planned on doing. So I just wish you had been able to go there. Do you have that on your list of places to visit?
Actually, yes. I've been talking with my advisor, Joe Doran, and I spoke to him about potentially traveling with the 2022 IQP group to Namibia. So we might be able to work something out with that so that I can go not this spring, but the following spring, assuming that everything COVID-wise has like kind of calmed down.
Fingers crossed on both notes that COVID has calmed down and that you get to travel. That sounds like that would be a wonderful opportunity. Jenna, thank you for joining us and thank you for reflecting upon your IQP.
Thank you.